rise up, stand the price, the loss of legs. My occupation, in essence, not complacent. Block the banquet, stop the computation. I'ma make the coda, fools just wanna make the quota. They can't rock around here, they need baking soda. This a hydra, no way they taking over. Lay them below the basement with snakes and cobras.
This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on PharcydeTV Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Come hang. Peace. This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life. Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Crystal, and some of you, a lot of you probably know this, some of you may not. I'm a comic book artist. I've worked for Marvel and DC Comics and just about any other publisher you can think of for the past 20 or so years. I also am an art educator. I taught college art. I built one of the most prestigious comic book art programs at one of the most prestigious art schools in the country with my good friend Pat Quinn. And I stopped teaching about 6-7 years ago to do art full time, and I missed it. So I decided to find a way to get back to it, but more on my terms, with my hours, doing it the way I want to do it. So I created something called Inkpulp Instruction. This is an online art instructional school to teach you how to be a better artist. It focuses mainly in the areas of comic book art, but covers over into illustration, painting, animation, tattooing a bit, and so on. So I decided I'd give you all a taste, some free lessons on my podcast, and I'm going to talk to you about a simple approach for drawing the human head. And this will be done over 3 episodes. And today's episode, we're going to focus on using simple shapes to create a complicated image. It's smart to work general to specific, simple to detailed. So let's just focus on the simplicity today. Let's not get complicated, and let's talk about the human head. So what I'm gonna draw is a generalized human head. It's not. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone's proportions are different, and these are kind of the rules that give you a guide to base everything on. And once you're comfortable with that, exaggerate the proportions, exaggerate the shapes, and play with it, and you'll have a really successful time drawing. So let's start. So what I like to start with, I'm going to start with the head and profile. I like to start with the cranial mass. Okay? The cranial mass is basically the big round part of your skull. And once I have that in place, everything kind of falls off of that. So when we're dealing with the head and profile, we can kind of cut that sphere in half, and from this down to here, if you cut that area in half, that's kind of a good place where the center of your eyes will lie. I like to draw a little line above that as well to let me know where the brow line is. And once I've got that in place, I like to create a little indent on the brow, and then if I cut from the eye level down to the chin in half, I've got my nose level. Okay, starting to look like a face already. Now the brow level to the bottom of the nose level is a good place for an ear. And I'm going to draw in the ear. This is kind of a shape language I've developed over years of repetitive drawing for the ear. Boom, 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 boom. Now if you cut this area in half, that's the division in your lips. So the front lip juts out a bit, the bottom lip juts back a bit, and then, depending on the person, you'll have a pronounced chin to some degree. Okay, now if we come around the cranial mass here, it tucks under a bit, and that's where the neck extends from. Cool. I like to lie in the eyeball as a general circular shape, and this line up here indicating my brow level lets me place my brow accordingly. Okay. Now this is the center of my eye, so my upper eyelid's going to fall off of that. Remember that circle I drew is the ball that's lying in a socket. So that will, this line right here is where the eyelid tucks into the eye socket a bit. Draw a lower lid and lay in your eye. Alright. Now you can, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but get in some nostrils there is not a bad idea. Alright. That line I drew is a little off. Okay. And what you've got here is kind of a generalized, simplified human head in profile. Now, if we're drawing the same exact person right next to it, everything should line up simply. So I'm going to adhere to that. So let's get the cranial mass in place for a head-on view, which is a very flat presentation of the face. So is a profile. We'll get into three-quarter view on the next lesson, which gives you the most volume. So if you draw a line down the center of the cranial mass, down here we'll get our chin in place, lining up with that. Again, we can follow these guides to line up what's going to be our eyes. Cutting this in half gives us our nose. Cutting this in half gives us our mouth. I like to flatten out the sides a little bit. Okay. The ears, remember, follow the same guides as the eye and the bottom of the nose. And again, that's just a very simplified, generalized shape I've developed for ears from repetitive drawing. Now there's a little divot right here where the brow and the nose meet. And from here you can, I'm just going to draw a straight line. I mean, the nose can get wider, it can get thinner, there's lots of things you can do there. But you can draw nostrils coming off the bottom of it, so on and so forth. Okay. So now I'm going to draw the brow coming off of the brow line. When I say brow, I mean eyebrow, obviously. Making sure I'm being super clear. Okay. Brows are in place. Now, when it comes to drawing the eye, what I want to avoid is, and this is a very common mistake you see in art students, they draw the eye like that. And that is really flat looking. It's like an almond, a very flat almond. So what I like to do is darken. I'm going to darken the top of the upper eye, the eyelid, the upper eyelid. Indicate a little bit where the tear duct is. Then I'll have a little indicator where the bottom is. And then we can have the eye. By not having this bottom attached, it kind of prevents some flattening out. Alright, so I tend to draw a little more angular like. So that top lid, and I'll explain a bit on my angular drawing style in the next episode, because it has to do with seeing the geometry of the wedges, which allow you to describe the anatomical masses in light and shadow. We'll get there next time. So today, we're going to stay focused on this. So upper eyelid, okay. And then some artists don't even draw the lower eyelid when we're talking about head on. You could have a little indicator there. I think it's totally okay. It's not going to flatten it out too much. Okay. Now when it comes to the mouth, the corners of the mouth tend to line up with the center of the pupils. So instead of just drawing one straight line across, I tend to give it a little bit of curvature to give it a little more volume. Okay, looks like he's crying with his dotted lines. I'm just darkening in the lines I want to keep. Finessing as I go, and that is just a very general, simple approach to drawing the human head. So tune in next week for we're going to deal with the head in 3/4 view, and we're going to start adding volume and depth to it. So it's going to get a little more complicated, but we're going to still build with simple shapes. So tune in for that, and check out my website, inkpulpinstruction.com. If you sign up for my newsletter by giving your email address, you'll get a newsletter twice a month full of all kinds of stuff, educational stuff, stuff about my art, thoughts on life. I spread positivity. And you'll also get a free lesson. And it'll give you a little more of a taste of Inkpulp Instruction, just like this is giving you as well. And then after that, you are ready to be a student of Inkpulp Instruction. Get yourself an episode, or if you wait till 2022, most likely on January 1st, I'm going to be releasing a subscription option to Inkpulp Instruction. So check that out. Thanks again for listening. Please, any questions you have, leave in the comments below. I check them and answer them regularly. So even if you have feedback, not questions, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. Peace. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.